Imagine opening your eyes and hearing, "You fell fixing the barn, honey." You don't remember the barn or the house or the woman, but everyone acts like you've always lived there, especially 3 kids who call you dad. Now tell me, would you trust it or play along to uncover the truth? Because he plays along, and chaos becomes routine. The sun hadn't yet cracked the horizon when Owen Patterson's Land Rover ate up the miles of rural highway, leaving behind the last vestiges of civilization. His jaw was set, his knuckles white on the steering wheel, and his mind was already calculating the profit margins of his latest acquisition, or rather, what would become his latest acquisition by noon. 37,000 acres of prime agricultural land, currently divided among 12 family farms that had been hemorrhaging money for the past 3 years. Patterson Holdings would buy them out for pennies on the dollar, consolidate the properties, and flip the entire package to Agricorp International within 6 months. Conservative estimate, $42 million in profit. The numbers always made sense. People, on the other hand, were messy. His phone buzzed for the 15th time that morning. Owen ignored it. Marcus, his long-suffering assistant, would just have to wait. The man had a pathological need to confirm and reconfirm every detail, as if Owen hadn't built a billion-dollar empire on reading contracts once and making split-second decisions that left lawyers scrambling to catch up. At 39, Owen Patterson was everything his father had never been: successful, ruthless, and allergic to sentiment. The old man had been a farmer, working himself into an early grave trying to keep a failing operation afloat. Owen had learned exactly 2 things from watching his father's slow destruction. Land was power, and emotion was weakness. He'd gotten the land part down to a science. The emotion part had never been a problem. The GPS indicated 15 more miles to Millbrook, the largest of the farming communities he was about to dismantle. He'd meet with the holdouts, make his final offer, and be back in the city by dinner. Clean, efficient, profitable. Owen didn't see the deer until it was too late. The animal materialized in his headlights like a ghost, frozen in that split second of mutual recognition. He cranked the wheel hard left. The Land Rover responded, but the wet road didn't. The world became a kaleidoscope of sky, asphalt, and screaming metal as the vehicle left the road, caught air, and introduced itself violently to a drainage ditch. If this story is touching your heart, show your support. Leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and share it with your friends. Every action helps us keep bringing you new stories full of emotion. The last thing Owen Patterson remembered was the strange thought that his father would have said this was karma. Then, nothing. Harper Millbrook had been awake since 4:30, which was sleeping in by farm standards. She'd already fed the chickens, collected eggs, helped her father repair a section of fence that the ornery goat, Satan aptly named, had destroyed in the night, and was now trying to convince her 3-year-old twin nephews that oatmeal was in fact food and not a paste for art projects. "Come on, Mason, just 3 more bites," she coaxed, wiping a glob of oatmeal off her cheek that had definitely been flung with intent. Mason, a tiny dictator with her same brown eyes and his late father's stubborn chin, crossed his arms. "No. Yes. No. I'll let you help me gather eggs later," Harper tried. "No eggs. Want pancakes." His twin, Liam, saw an opportunity and immediately chimed in. "Pancakes, pancakes, pancakes!" From her high chair, 10-month-old Daisy, who had learned exactly 1 word and used it with alarming frequency, contributed helpfully, "No." Harper closed her eyes and counted to 10. She'd been counting to 10 a lot since her brother and sister-in-law died in that tractor accident 18 months ago, leaving behind 3 kids and a mountain of grief. Her parents had taken the children in without hesitation, and Harper, who'd been living in Nashville trying and failing to make it as a songwriter, had come home to help. She'd thought it would be temporary. That was before she'd fallen completely in love with these 3 tiny terrorists. Fine. Pancakes tomorrow. Today finish the oatmeal or no story time. Mason considered this. Liam looked to his brother for guidance. This was their dynamic. Mason led, Liam followed, and Daisy destroyed everything in her wake. 2 bites, Mason negotiated. 4. 3. Harper stuck out her hand. Deal. They shook on it, which was ridiculous and adorable, and made her heart hurt in that way that meant she was in too deep to ever leave. Her mother breezed into the kitchen, already dressed for her shift at the county hospital. "Any word from the lawyer?" Harper's stomach tightened. "Meetings this afternoon, all 12 families. The Patterson Holdings meeting, the one that would decide whether their community continued to exist or became another corporate acquisition statistic." Her mother's mouth pressed into a thin line. "Your father's not going. Says he'd rather lose the farm than beg." "It's not begging, Mama. It's negotiating. With a shark." Her mother grabbed her purse and keys. "That man has bought up half the farmland in 3 counties. He doesn't negotiate. He waits until you're desperate, then he takes everything." Harper had done her research. Owen Patterson was exactly as advertised. Brilliant, ruthless, and completely without conscience when it came to business. He'd started with nothing and built an empire by being smarter and more brutal than everyone else. He also, according to every photo she'd found online, looked like he'd been carved from granite and fury by a sculptor, with a preference for sharp angles and cold eyes. Not that it mattered what he looked like. He was still the man who was about to destroy everything her family had built over 4 generations. Her phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello? Ms. Millbrook, this is County General Hospital. You're listed as next of kin for a John Doe brought in early this morning. He had your family's address in his GPS." Harper's blood ran cold. "I don't understand. He was in a single vehicle accident about 3 miles from your property. No ID, no wallet, severe head trauma. He's stable but unconscious. We need someone to come down and see if you can identify him." Her mind raced. 3 miles from their property, coming from the direction of the city. A terrible, impossible thought crystallized. "I'll be right there," Harper said, already grabbing her keys. 45 minutes later, she stood in a sterile hospital room, staring down at the man in the bed. Even bruised and bandaged, even unconscious, she recognized him from the photos. Owen Patterson. The man who was supposed to destroy her community was lying in a hospital bed with no memory of who he was. And Harper Millbrook, who'd never told a lie bigger than "Yes, Grandma, your pie is delicious," suddenly saw an opportunity so audacious, so completely insane, that her songwriter brain immediately began crafting the most elaborate fiction of her life. "That's my husband," she heard herself say. The lie hung in the air like smoke, and Harper wanted to grab it back, stuff it down her throat, pretend she'd never opened her mouth. But the nurse was already nodding sympathetically, making notes on her clipboard, and the words "my husband" were now part of the official record. What had she done? "Mrs. Patterson, I'm so sorry you're going through this," the nurse said, her voice warm with practiced compassion. "The doctor will want to speak with you about his condition. He's stable, but the head trauma was significant." Patterson. The nurse had called her Mrs. Patterson. Harper's breakfast threatened to make a reappearance. What can you tell me?" Harper managed, moving closer to the bed because that's what a worried wife would do, right? The man, Owen, the enemy, the soon-to-be destroyer of everything she loved, looked disturbingly vulnerable under the harsh hospital lights. Someone had cleaned the blood from his face, revealing a strong jaw now shadowed with stubble, a straight nose that had probably been broken at least once, and a mouth that even in unconsciousness looked like it was used to giving orders. His chart said he was 6'3". In the bed he looked even larger, all broad shoulders and long limbs barely contained by the standard-issue hospital blanket. Severe concussion, possible traumatic brain injury. We won't know the extent until he wakes up. His CT scan showed some swelling but no bleeding. That's good news. The nurse checked the IV drip. "Has he had any previous head injuries that you know of?" No. Not that he told me. Not technically a lie. He definitely hadn't told her. "Any allergies?" "No." "Please let that be true." "And you said there was no ID found at the scene?" Harper's mind raced. This was it. The moment she could back out, confess, explain, it was all a misunderstanding. He must have lost his wallet in the accident. He was on his way home from a business trip. That part was actually true, in a horrible twist of irony. The nurse squeezed her shoulder. "Don't worry. The important thing is he's alive. Many people don't walk away from an accident like that. Walk away. Would he walk away? Or would he wake up with no memory? Could head trauma actually do that, or was it just something that happened in the soap operas her grandmother religiously watched? Harper had about 3 seconds to contemplate the cosmic joke of basing her criminal fraud on daytime television before Owen Patterson's eyes opened. They were the color of honey held up to sunlight, and they were staring directly at her with absolutely no recognition. "Hi," she whispered, "because what else do you say to the man whose life you're about to steal?" His brow furrowed. He tried to sit up, winced, and fell back against the pillows. "Where?" His voice was rough, scratchy. "What happened?" The nurse moved to his other side. "Mr. Patterson, you were in a car accident. You're at County General Hospital. You've been unconscious for about 12 hours. How are you feeling?" "Like I got hit by a truck." He closed his eyes briefly, then opened them again, focusing on Harper. Do I know you?" The room tilted. This was it. The moment of truth, except Harper was about to serve up the biggest lie of her life instead. "Owen." Her voice cracked on his name. "It's me, Harper, your wife." Something flickered across his face. Confusion, maybe fear, definitely frustration. I can't." His hand went to his head and he flinched. "Why can't I remember?" The nurse's expression shifted from concern to alarm. "Mr. Patterson, what's the last thing you do remember?" A long pause. Too long. When he spoke again, his voice was tight with barely controlled panic. "I don't know. I don't remember anything. Not the accident, not—" His honey-colored eyes locked on Harper again, desperate. "Not you. I should remember you. Why don't I remember you?" Harper felt like she was free-falling. This was actually happening. Owen Patterson, billionaire land baron, had complete amnesia, and she just claimed to be his wife. "It's okay," she heard herself say, reaching out to take his hand because a wife would do that. And dear God, his hand was huge and warm and very much attached to a living, breathing human being whose life she was hijacking. "The important thing is you're okay. The memories will come back." Would they? She had no idea. She knew exactly nothing about amnesia, except what she'd absorbed from her grandmother's stories about soap opera characters who conveniently forgot entire decades of plot. "Mr. Patterson, I'm going to page Dr. Morrison. He'll want to run some tests." The nurse was already heading for the door. "Mrs. Patterson, stay with him. Try not to let him get agitated." And then Harper was alone with him. Owen Patterson stared at her like she was a puzzle he needed to solve. "Harper," he said slowly, testing her name. "We're married." "Yes." The word came out barely above a whisper. "How long?" Oh no, she hadn't thought this through, at all. 5 years. Why 5 years? Why not 2 or 10? Her brain was malfunctioning. "Do we have kids?" Her heart stopped. "Yes, 3. She'd just added 3 children to her lie. 3 real children who were currently at home eating oatmeal, or more likely wearing it, and who had no idea their Aunt Harper had lost her entire mind in a hospital room. Owen closed his eyes, and for a horrible moment, Harper thought he was going to cry. But when he opened them again, there was something else there, determination mixed with vulnerability, that made him look almost human. "Tell me about them," he said. "Tell me about us. Tell me who I am." And Harper Millbrook, who'd come to the hospital to identify her enemy, took a deep breath and began constructing the most elaborate fiction of her life, starting with the man in the bed who had no idea he was supposed to be destroying her world. Harper's mouth was dry as the Sahara, as Owen's honey-colored eyes waited for her to explain his entire life. To her life she was making up on the spot, like some deranged improv artist whose only preparation was binge-watching soap operas with her grandmother. "We met 6 years ago," she began, her voice steadier than she felt. "At the county fair. You were visiting from the city, taking a break from work, and I was selling our honey at the farmer's market." Owen's brow furrowed, like he was trying to pull the memory from somewhere it didn't exist. "What do I do? For work? Oh, God. What would a simple farmer do?" "You help run the family farm. We grow corn, soybeans, and we have dairy goats. Please let him not ask technical questions about crops or goats, because her knowledge extended to, they eat things, and sometimes they scream." "And the kids?" His voice softened. "Tell me about them." Harper's heart clenched thinking about Mason, Liam, and Daisy. Mason and Liam are 3, twins. They're spirited. That was putting it mildly. And Daisy is 10 months old. She just learned to say no and uses it for everything. A ghost of a smile crossed Owen's face. "Sounds exhausting." "It is," Harper said honestly, because that part wasn't a lie. But they're wonderful. You're wonderful with them. You read to them every night, even when you're dead tired from working the fields. She was describing the father she wished these kids had, the father they deserved. What happened before the accident? Owen's hand went to his head again, frustration evident in every line of his body. You were fixing the barn roof, lost your footing, fell, and hit your head on the beam. The lie was getting more elaborate. Soon she'd need a flowchart. We thought you were fine, but then you got dizzy and confused, so I brought you to the hospital. And my wallet? Must have fallen out during the fall. We'll find it when we get home. Home. To a place he'd never been. To meet children who weren't his, to live a life that was pure fiction. What had she done? Dr. Morrison chose that moment to enter, clipboard in hand and concern on his face. He was in his 60s, grey-haired, and had delivered half the babies in the county, including Harper. "Mrs. Patterson," he said, and Harper's stomach lurched again at the name. "Could I speak with you outside?" In the hallway, Dr. Morrison's expression was grave. "The amnesia appears to be retrograde and extensive. He's lost all autobiographical memory, but retained semantic knowledge. He knows what things are, just not his personal history. Will it come back? Possibly. These things are unpredictable. Could be days, could be months, could be permanent." He paused. "The best thing you can do is provide a stable, familiar environment. Don't push him to remember. Let him recover at his own pace." Harper nodded, guilt already eating her alive. "Can I take him home?" "Tomorrow if his vitals remain stable, but he'll need someone with him at all times for the first few weeks, and absolutely no stressful situations. His brain needs to heal. No stressful situations. Like finding out your entire life is a lie?" 3 hours later, Harper sat at her family's kitchen table surrounded by her parents and her grandfather, trying to explain why she'd just committed what was probably several felonies. "You told them what?" Her father, James Millbrook, looked like he was about to have an aneurysm. He was a big man with a thick mustache and hands calloused from 40 years of farm work. Right now those hands were gripping the table like he might flip it. "That he's my husband," Harper said miserably. "That we've been married for 5 years and have 3 kids. Her mother, Sarah, sat down heavily. "Harper Louise Millbrook, what were you thinking?" "I was thinking," Harper said, hearing her voice rise, "that the man who was about to destroy our entire community, put 12 families out of their homes, and turn everything we've built into another soulless corporate farm was lying there with no memory, and maybe, just maybe, this was divine intervention." "Divine intervention?" her father sputtered. "This is fraud, kidnapping, identity theft." "It's an opportunity," said a new voice. Everyone turned to Grandpa Joe, who sat in his corner chair wearing his signature tweed cap, and a smile that suggested he'd heard better stories, but this one would do. "Pop, you can't be serious," James said. "Why not?" The old man's eyes twinkled. "The boy doesn't remember being a ruthless businessman, so we teach him to be something else, someone better. By lying to him." Sarah's voice was strained. "By giving him a chance to choose a different life," Grandpa Joe countered. "Maybe he wakes up and realizes he doesn't want to be the man who destroys communities. Maybe he becomes the man who saves one." Harper looked at her grandfather with something like hope. "You think it could work?" "I think," he said slowly, "that sometimes God works in mysterious ways, and sometimes those ways involve car accidents and convenient amnesia." He stood up, joints creaking. "But if we're doing this, we're doing it right. Every night, this family prays for forgiveness. And the second that boy's memory comes back, we confess everything and face the consequences." James looked at his father like he'd grown a second head. "You're actually suggesting we go through with this insanity?" "I'm suggesting," Grandpa Joe said, "that we have 4 months before Patterson Holdings forecloses on our properties. 4 months to either lose everything or try something desperate." He looked at Harper. "The girl's already jumped off the cliff. Question is, do we let her fall alone?" Sarah's hand found her husband's. "James, what if he's right? What if this man, without his money and power, is actually decent? And what if he's not?" James shot back. "What if he's exactly the same ruthless bastard, just confused? What then?" "Then we're no worse off than we already are," Harper said quietly. "But if there's even a chance—" "There are 3 children involved in this," her father interrupted. "Mason, Liam, and Daisy. What happens when they get attached to a man who's going to disappear? That stopped Harper cold. She hadn't thought about that, or rather, she'd thought about it and shoved it down because it was too painful to consider. "We'll figure it out," she said, with more confidence than she felt. A long silence filled the kitchen. The clock on the wall ticked. Outside, the rooster crowed even though it was afternoon, because Hank the rooster had never quite figured out his job. Finally, James Milbrook stood up. "I don't like this. I don't like lying, I don't like fraud, and I really don't like the idea of my daughter playing house with a stranger." "Dad," he held up his hand, "but I like losing the farm even less. And if your grandfather thinks this is divinely inspired insanity instead of just regular insanity, then—" He sighed heavily. "God help us all, but I'm in." Sarah nodded slowly. "We protect the children first. If he shows any sign of being dangerous—" "He won't," Harper said, then realized she had no basis for that claim. She didn't know Owen Patterson from Adam. She just knew he had honey-colored eyes and looked lost in a hospital bed. "Tomorrow we bring home a stranger and convince him he's one of us," James said grimly. "Anyone want to back out now?" No one moved. "Then heaven help us," he said, "because we're going to need it." Harper sat in the kitchen long after everyone else had gone to bed, staring at the photo of her brother on the mantel. "I hope I'm doing the right thing, Tommy," she whispered. "For your kids. For all of us." The photo didn't answer, but somewhere in her chest Harper felt the solid weight of a decision made. For better or worse, Owen Patterson was about to become a farmer, and she was about to become the world's most reluctant wife. Owen Patterson, or the man who thought he was a simple farmer named Owen Patterson, stepped out of Harper's ancient pickup truck and stared at what was apparently his home. The house was small, painted a faded yellow that suggested the paint job had been aspirational at best, with a wraparound porch that sagged slightly on one end. Chickens wandered freely through the yard. A goat was eating what looked like someone's work shirt off the clothesline. And the smell, a combination of animals, earth, and something baking that made his stomach rumble despite his confusion. "This is it," Harper said, her voice tight with something he couldn't identify. Nervousness? Fear? Guilt? Owen's head throbbed too much to analyze. What was he supposed to say? That it felt completely foreign, that every instinct he had was screaming that something was wrong. "Nice." Harper's laugh was short and sharp. "You don't have to lie. You always said the house needed work." Did he? Owen had no idea what he'd always said. He had no idea about anything except the crushing weight of emptiness where his memories should be. The front door burst open, and 3 small children erupted onto the porch like tiny tornadoes. "Daddy, Daddy!" The 2 identical boys, Mason and Liam, he remembered Harper saying, raced down the steps at full speed. Behind them, a tiny girl with wild curls bounced in her grandmother's arms, shrieking what sounded like "da-da-da." Owen froze. These were his children. He'd helped create these small humans. He must have held them as babies, changed their diapers, watched them take their first steps. And he remembered absolutely none of it. "Boys, careful," Harper called out, but it was too late. Mason and Liam hit Owen at knee height with the force of small, enthusiastic missiles. He stumbled backward, his still healing head spinning, and would have fallen if Harper hadn't grabbed his arm. "Easy there, cowboy," she murmured, and something about her voice, low and warm close to his ear, sent a shiver down his spine that had nothing to do with head trauma. "You came back." Mason, or was it Liam, wrapped arms around Owen's leg. "Mama said you got hurt real bad." Owen looked down at the small boy clinging to him, dark hair sticking up at odd angles, face smudged with what might be jelly or possibly paint. His son. The word felt foreign and terrifying and somehow impossibly right. "I did get hurt," Owen said slowly, crouching down despite his protesting head. "But I'm okay now." The other twin, Liam, peered at him suspiciously. "Mama cried. We heard her in the bathroom." Harper's face flushed red. "Boys, why don't you help Daddy inside? Grandma made chicken and dumplings." The mention of food distracted the twins enough that they released Owen and raced back toward the house, arguing about who got to sit next to Daddy at dinner. Owen straightened carefully, his head swimming. "You cried?" "Of course I cried," Harper said, not meeting his eyes. "You're my husband. You had a serious accident." The word husband sent another jolt through him. This woman, with her long brown hair escaping from a practical ponytail, her worn jeans and flannel shirt, her face bare of makeup except for the worry etched around her eyes, was his wife. He tried to find something familiar in her features, some spark of recognition. She had a small scar on her chin, barely visible. Had he been there when she got it? Had he kissed it? Had he— "We should go inside," Harper said abruptly. "Everyone's waiting." The inside of the house was organized chaos. The living room featured a couch that had seen better decades, a coffee table covered in coloring books and crayons, and walls decorated with children's artwork and family photos. Owen moved closer to one photo, a wedding picture. Him and Harper, younger, smiling at the camera. She wore a simple white dress and he wore a suit that looked uncomfortably tight. They looked happy. Why couldn't he remember? "Owen, come meet the family." An older woman emerged from the kitchen, wiping her hands on her apron. She had Harper's eyes and a warm smile that made something in his chest ache. "I'm Sarah, your mother-in-law, though you always call me Mama Sarah." She pulled him into a hug that smelled like cinnamon and comfort. Behind her, a man with a thick mustache and suspicious eyes extended his hand. "James Millbrook, welcome home, son." The words were right, but the tone suggested James was reserving judgment on whether Owen actually belonged there. An elderly man in a tweed cap appeared from around the corner, eyes twinkling with something that looked disturbingly like amusement. "And I'm Joe, but you call me Grandpa, or sometimes Old Man when you think I can't hear you." Owen shook his hand, noting the firm grip that belied the man's age. "I'm sorry, I don't remember." "Nonsense!" Grandpa Joe waved off his apology. "You'll remember when you're meant to. Until then, we'll just make new memories." Dinner was overwhelming. The twins argued over everything. Daisy threw food with alarming accuracy, and Grandpa Joe told increasingly outlandish stories that Owen suspected were entirely fabricated. Harper sat beside him, tense and quiet, occasionally touching his arm when the noise got too loud, as if checking he was okay. Each touch sent electricity through him that he didn't understand. After dinner, after bath time, where he learned that 3 small children could displace approximately 70 gallons of water onto the bathroom floor, after story time, where Mason corrected every single thing Owen read because that's not how Daddy does the voices, Harper led him to what was apparently their bedroom. It was small, and there was only one bed. Of course there was only one bed. They were married. Married people shared beds. That's how it worked. So why did Harper look like she might be sick? "I'll take the floor," Owen said immediately. "What? No, you have a head injury. You need to—" "Harper." He stepped closer, and she backed up until she hit the dresser. They were inches apart now, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, smell the vanilla scent of her shampoo. "I don't remember you. I don't remember us. I'm not going to— I won't." He struggled to find words. "I'll take the floor until I remember." Something flickered across her face. Relief? Disappointment? Both? "That's—" She swallowed hard. "That's very considerate." They stood there, frozen, the air between them thick with something Owen couldn't name. He found his eyes dropping to her mouth, wondering what it would feel like to kiss her. They were married. Surely he'd kissed her thousands of times. He should know the shape of her lips, the taste of her. He leaned in slightly, testing. Harper's hand flew up, pressing against his chest. "Wait. I'm sorry, I just thought—" "The doctor," she said quickly, her breathing uneven. "He said you need to avoid stressful activities. Anything that could raise your blood pressure or— Kissing my wife is stressful?" "Apparently everything is stressful when you have a brain injury." Her voice pitched higher. He was very clear. No excitement, no exertion, no anything for at least a few weeks. Owen frowned. "That seems excessive." "Well, I'm not a doctor, but I'm also not going to risk your recovery because I'm impatient." She squeezed past him, putting the bed between them like a barrier. "So, floor, rest, doctor's orders." She was lying. Every instinct he had, and apparently those survived amnesia, told him she was lying. But why would she lie about something like that? "Harper, I need to go check on Daisy," she said, already heading for the door. "Make yourself comfortable. Extra blankets in the closet." And she was gone, leaving Owen standing in a strange bedroom that was supposed to be his, in a house full of people who were supposed to be his family, married to a woman who couldn't look him in the eye. Something was very, very wrong. But as Owen lay on the hard floor later, Listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the house settling around him, he realized something else. He wanted it to be real. This life, these people, this woman who flinched every time he got too close, he wanted it to be his, even if he couldn't remember a single moment of it. Owen's first full day as a farmer started at 5 in the morning, when a rooster that apparently had a personal vendetta against sleep screamed directly outside the bedroom window. He jolted awake on the floor, every muscle protesting, his head pounding. For one blissful second, he thought maybe he'd wake up and remember everything. Instead, he woke up to the same blank void where his life should be, and the sound of Harper's breathing from the bed above him. He'd lain awake for hours last night, listening to her toss and turn, wondering what kind of marriage they had where his wife seemed terrified to be in the same room with him. "Owen?" Her voice came from above, sleep-rough and somehow more intimate than anything that had passed between them. "You awake?" "Courtesy of your rooster." "That's Hank. He's an overachiever." The bed springs creaked as she sat up. "Welcome to farm life. It only gets louder from here." She wasn't kidding. Within minutes, the house exploded into chaos. Grandpa Joe was clanging pots in the kitchen, singing something that might have been a hymn or a drinking song. The twins thundered down the hallway arguing about who got the blue cup. Daisy wailed from her crib like a tiny, furious alarm system. Owen pulled himself up from the floor, wincing. Everything hurt. "Are you okay?" Harper appeared in the doorway, already dressed in worn jeans and a plaid shirt, her hair pulled back in a no-nonsense braid. She looked fresh and alert and completely comfortable in this chaos that made Owen feel like he'd been dropped into an alternate universe. "Define okay?" She almost smiled. Almost. "Come on. Breakfast. Then your dad wants to show you around the property. Apparently, you need to remember how things work around here." James Millbrook's version of showing him around turned out to be a 4-hour boot camp designed to test whether Owen was actually a farmer or had been playing one on TV. "This here's the milking parlor," James said, gesturing to a building that smelled like exactly what Owen expected, a building full of goats to smell like. "You milk 12 goats every morning and evening. Think you remember how?" Owen stared at the goats, who stared back with unnerving rectangular pupils and expressions that suggested they were judging him. "No." "Figured." James grabbed a stool and demonstrated with efficient, practiced movements. "Your turn." 30 minutes later, Owen had been head-butted twice, kicked once, and had accomplished exactly nothing except making the goats angry and himself frustrated. "You used to be able to do this in your sleep," James observed unhelpfully. "Well, I can't now," Owen snapped, his patience fraying. He grabbed the bucket and tried again, approaching a particularly mean-looking goat that Harper had identified as Princess with what he hoped was confidence. Princess waited until Owen was perfectly positioned, then kicked the bucket directly into his face. "Son of a... language!" Harper appeared from nowhere, fighting what looked like a smile. "The kids repeat everything." Owen wiped milk off his face and glared at Princess, who bleated triumphantly. "That goat is evil. She's particular. You have to talk to her first." "Talk to her?" "Yes, she likes compliments." Owen looked at Harper to see if she was joking. She wasn't. "You want me to compliment a goat?" "If you want milk, yes." This was insane. His entire life was insane. Owen turned to Princess and, feeling absolutely ridiculous, said, "You're a very pretty goat." Princess stared at him. "Your fur looks nice today." "Nothing." Harper sighed and moved closer, her arm brushing his as she reached past him toward Princess. "Like this." Her voice dropped to something soft and warm. "Hey there, pretty girl. Looking beautiful this morning." "Yes, you are. Such a good girl." Princess immediately calmed, pressing into Harper's hand. "Are you kidding me?" Owen stared. "That actually works. Animals know when you're being sincere." Harper's eyes met his, and for a moment something passed between them. Amusement, maybe connection, definitely heat. Then she pulled away quickly. "Try again, and mean it this time." 2 hours later, Owen had successfully milked 4 goats, mucked out 3 stalls, fixed a fence that had personally offended him by falling apart when he looked at it, and discovered muscles he didn't know existed. He was also starting to suspect that whoever he'd been before the accident had never done a single day of farm work in his life. The way James watched him struggle, the careful patience in his instructions, the complete lack of expectation, it all felt like teaching, not reminding. "You're doing good, son," James said as they finished securing the fence. "Better than I expected, honestly." "What do you mean?" James hesitated. "You've been distracted lately. Work's been on your mind more than the farm. It's good to see you focusing again." Work? What kind of work did he do? Harper had mentioned the farm, but something about James's tone suggested there was more to the story. Before Owen could ask, Mason and Liam came tearing around the barn, covered in mud and shrieking with laughter. "Daddy, Daddy, come see what we found." "It's a frog," Liam shouted. "I found it," Mason corrected. "You both found it," Owen said, letting them drag him toward whatever amphibian disaster awaited. The frog turned out to be enormous, green, and highly uncooperative. It took 15 minutes of the three of them crawling through the mud before Owen finally caught it, more by luck than skill. "You got him," Mason cheered. "Can we keep him?" Liam asked hopefully. "No," Harper called from the porch, Daisy on her hip. "The last time we kept a frog, he escaped and Grandpa found him in his coffee." "That was one time," Mason protested. "One time too many." But she was smiling, and when her eyes met Owen's, both of them covered in mud, the twins hanging off his arms, something shifted in her expression, something soft and sad and achingly tender. Lunch was loud, chaotic, and oddly perfect. Grandpa Joe told stories about Owen's childhood that Owen was 90% sure were completely fabricated. Sarah fussed over everyone, making sure plates were full and hearts were fuller. James discussed crop rotation with the intensity of a military strategist, and Harper sat beside Owen, close enough that their arms brushed, occasionally wiping food off his shirt when Daisy's aim proved true, laughing at her grandfather's jokes, looking more relaxed than she had since he'd woken up in the hospital. Owen found himself watching her more than was probably appropriate, the way she tucked her hair behind her ear when she was thinking, how she cut food for the twins without being asked, the soft sound of her laugh when Grandpa Joe made a particularly terrible pun. She caught him staring. "What?" "Nothing, just—" He searched for words, trying to memorize it. "All of this." Her smile faltered. "Owen, I know I can't remember the past, but maybe I can start building new memories. Would that be okay?" Harper's eyes filled with tears. She blinked back quickly. "Yeah, that would be okay." Under the table, her hand found his and squeezed once before letting go. It was the first time she'd touched him voluntarily since the hospital, and Owen felt it like an electric shock straight to his chest. That night, after the kids were asleep and the house finally quiet, Owen found Harper on the porch swing staring out at the dark fields. "Can't sleep?" he asked. She startled. "Just thinking." He sat beside her, careful to maintain distance. The swing creaked under their combined weight. "About what?" "Everything, nothing." She pulled her knees up, wrapping her arms around them. "Do you feel it? That something's wrong?" His heart stopped. "What do you mean?" "Your life. Does it feel like it fits?" This was it. His chance to tell her that no, nothing felt right, that every instinct screamed that he was living someone else's existence. But then he looked at her profile in the moonlight, at the worry etched across her features, and thought about the kids sleeping inside, about James's careful teaching and Sarah's warm hugs and Grandpa Joe's terrible jokes. "It's starting to," he said quietly. Harper turned to face him, and in the darkness he couldn't read her expression. "Owen, I need to tell you something." A cry from inside. Daisy, awake and unhappy about it. "I'll get her," Harper said, already standing. "Harper, wait!" But she was gone, leaving Owen alone with the night and the growing certainty that his wife was hiding something. The question was, what? And the more terrifying question, did he really want to know? By the end of week 2, Owen had developed calluses on his hands, a permanent ache in his lower back, and an unhealthy competitive relationship with Princess the goat. He'd also developed an inconvenient and growing obsession with his wife. It started innocently enough, watching how she moved through the morning routine with the efficiency of a general commanding troops. How she could calm Daisy's screaming with nothing but a soft song. The way she'd bite her lower lip when concentrating on something, leaving a little indent that made Owen want to smooth it away with his thumb. Then came the moments that weren't innocent at all. Like yesterday, when she'd reached past him to grab a jar from the top shelf, and he'd caught the scent of her shampoo mixed with something uniquely her. He'd frozen, barely breathing, hyper-aware of how close she was, how easy it would be to turn his head and press his lips to the curve of her neck. Or this morning when she'd emerged from the bathroom in just a towel, hair dripping wet, and walked directly into him in the hallway. She'd gasped, hands flying to his chest to steady herself. For 3 heartbeats they'd stood there, his hands on her bare shoulders, her eyes wide and startled, before she'd mumbled an apology and fled. Owen was losing his mind. "You're staring again," Grandpa Joe observed, appearing beside him with the stealth of a much younger man. Owen jumped, nearly dropping the bucket of feed he'd been holding while watching Harper chase the twins through the yard. "I'm not. You're staring at your wife like a teenage boy with his first crush. It's adorable and also a little concerning since you've been married 5 years. Owen set down the bucket. "Can I ask you something?" "Shoot." "Does she seem, I don't know, nervous around me?" Grandpa Joe's expression turned crafty. "What makes you say that?" "Every time I get within 2 feet of her, she finds an excuse to leave. She barely looks at me during meals. Last night I tried to help her with the dishes, and she practically threw a plate at my head, telling me to go rest." "Well, you did have a serious head injury. 2 weeks ago, the doctor cleared me for normal activity." Owen ran a hand through his hair, frustrated. "Is she always like this? Were we having problems? Before the accident?" The old man's face softened. "Owen, my boy, sometimes when you love someone, you get scared. Scared of losing them. Scared of how much it would hurt if they went away." He patted Owen's shoulder. "Give her time. She almost lost you. That changes a person." It made sense. Sort of. Except Owen couldn't shake the feeling that there was something more. Something everyone knew, except him. His chance to investigate came that afternoon when Harper drove to town for supplies, taking the kids and leaving Owen alone with the mysterious boxes in the barn that James had explicitly told him not to open. Owen lasted approximately 4 minutes before his curiosity won. The boxes contained papers, lots of papers. Bills mostly, all marked past due in increasingly aggressive red stamps. Letters from banks, something called a foreclosure notice, and at the bottom a manila folder labeled Patterson Holdings. Owen's hands trembled as he opened it. Inside were printouts of news articles, property records, and a photo of a man in an expensive suit standing in front of a glass office building. The man looked familiar, very familiar. Owen was staring at his own face, but this wasn't him. Not the him he saw in the mirror every morning, sunburned and wearing flannel. This man was polished, professional, and according to the article headline, "Land Baron Patterson expands empire with rural acquisitions." Put that down. Owen spun to find James in the doorway, his face grave. "Who is this?" Owen held up the photo. "Someone you used to know. Don't play games with me. This is me, in this photo, but I'm—" He looked around the barn at the hay bales and tools and evidence of a life that suddenly felt wrong. "I'm not a farmer, am I?" James said nothing. "How much of what you've told me is true?" Owen's voice rose. "Am I even married to Harper? Are those even my kids?" "The kids are orphans," James said quietly. "My nephew and his wife died. We're raising them." The world tilted. "So Harper and I aren't—" "I didn't say that." "Then what are you saying?" Owen shouted, then immediately regretted it as his head pounded. He lowered his voice. "Please, just tell me the truth." James looked at him for a long moment. "The truth is complicated. Try me. The truth is that man in the photo was going to destroy this community, buy up the land for nothing, and flip it to corporations. 12 families, 4 generations of history, gone." James's jaw clenched. That man didn't care about people, only profit. And now that man doesn't remember being that person. And maybe, James's voice caught, maybe that's not a bad thing. Owen sank onto a hay bale, his mind reeling. "You're telling me I'm the villain in this story?" "Were," James corrected. "Past tense. The man you are now. He reads bedtime stories. He learns to milk goats even though they kick him. He makes my daughter smile." He moved closer. "So the question isn't who you were, son. It's who you want to be." Before Owen could respond, voices sounded from outside. Harper was back. "Please," James said urgently. "Don't tell her you know. Not yet. She's been through enough." Owen wanted to argue, wanted to demand more answers, but then Harper appeared in the doorway with Daisy on her hip and bags of groceries in her arms, and his heart did that stupid thing where it forgot how to beat properly. "There you are. Can you help with— Owen, you okay? You look pale." He forced a smile. "Fine. Just tired." As he took the bags from her, their fingers brushed. Harper's eyes met his, and Owen saw it. The guilt, the fear, the desperate hope that he wouldn't figure it out. Too late. That night, as Harper read bedtime stories and he tried to process his identity crisis, Mason climbed into Owen's lap. "Daddy? Yeah, buddy? Are you going to go away again?" Owen's chest tightened. "What do you mean?" "Before you got hurt, you weren't here much. You were always in the city." Mason's small hand grabbed Owen's shirt. "I don't want you to go." "I'm not going anywhere," Owen heard himself say. And the terrifying part, he meant it. Whoever he'd been before didn't matter. That man had been willing to destroy this family, this community. This man, the one Mason called Daddy, the one who'd learned to milk goats and fix fences, the one hopelessly attracted to a woman who may or may not be his wife. This man was better. Later, lying on his usual spot on the floor while Harper tossed restlessly in the bed above, Owen made a decision. He wouldn't confront her, not yet. Instead, he'd figure out exactly what happened, why she'd lied, and what it meant for both of them. But one thing was certain. He wasn't going back to being that man in the expensive suit. That man was dead, and Owen intended to keep it that way. Owen's new strategy of pretend everything is normal while secretly investigating your fake life was going about as well as his first attempt at milking goats, which is to say, poorly and with frequent injuries. The problem was Harper. Specifically, the problem was that now Owen knew the truth. He couldn't stop noticing all the little tells. The way she flinched whenever he asked about their wedding. How she'd changed the subject when he mentioned his past. The guilty expression that flashed across her face every time he said, "I love you," to the kids. And he couldn't stop testing her. "Harper," he said one morning over breakfast, watching her carefully. "What was our first dance song?" "At the wedding." She froze, coffee cup halfway to her lips. "Why?" "Just trying to remember. You know, building new memories by learning about old ones." Her eyes darted to her father, who suddenly became very interested in his eggs. "It was, her amazed by Lone Star." Grandpa Joe choked on his coffee. "You okay, Grandpa?" Owen asked innocently. Fine. Just went down the wrong pipe." The old man's eyes twinkled with what looked suspiciously like amusement. "Though I could have sworn it was Crazy by Patsy Cline." Harper shot her grandfather a look that could have curdled milk. "You're thinking of your wedding, Grandpa." "Am I? Memory's not what it used to be." Owen hid his smile. So they couldn't even keep their story straight. This was almost entertaining. Almost. If it wasn't also completely devastating. Because the worst part? Owen didn't even care that she'd lied. He cared that she looked so miserable about it. Later that afternoon, Owen found himself in the barn with Harper, supposedly helping her reorganize the feed storage. In reality, he was watching her stretch to reach the top shelf, her shirt riding up to reveal a strip of skin that made his mouth go dry. "Can you hand me that bag?" she asked, pointing. Owen grabbed it and stepped closer, deliberately invading her space. "Here." She turned, found him right behind her, and her breath caught. They were inches apart, close enough that he could see the flecks of gold in her brown eyes, the freckles scattered across her nose, the pulse jumping in her throat. "Owen!" Her voice came out strangled. "Harper." He kept his voice low, intimate. "Can I ask you something?" "What?" She pressed back against the shelf like a cornered animal. "Why are you so afraid of me?" "I'm not." "You are. Every time I get close, you run. Every time I try to touch you, you flinch." He raised his hand slowly, giving her time to stop him, and tucked a strand of hair behind her ear. His fingers grazed her cheek, and she trembled. "I'm your husband, or at least I'm supposed to be. So why do you look at me like you're terrified?" Harper's eyes filled with tears. "Because I am." "Of me? Of losing you?" Her voice cracked. "Of you remembering everything and realizing what?" She shook her head, tears spilling over. "I can't. Owen, please, I can't." Daisy's wail from the house cut through the moment. Harper used it as an escape route, ducking under his arm and running. Owen let her go, his heart pounding. Whatever she was hiding, it was destroying her. And despite everything, the lies, the deception, the elaborate fraud, he wanted to tell her it was okay, because somehow, impossibly, it was. That evening, disaster struck in the form of Mason's brilliant idea to help by letting all the chickens out of their coop. "I wanted them to play," Mason explained, as 20 chickens scattered across the property with the enthusiasm of prisoners staging a jailbreak. "This is a catastrophe," Harper muttered, chasing a particularly fast rooster. "This is hilarious," Grandpa Joe corrected from his porch chair, providing commentary instead of assistance. Owen found himself in a tag-team chicken-catching operation with Harper, both of them covered in feathers and dirt, laughing despite the chaos. "Got one," Harper dove, snatching up a hen. She turned to Owen, triumphant, hair wild around her face, dirt streaked across her cheek, grinning like she'd won the lottery. And Owen fell completely, irrevocably in love, not with his wife, with this woman, this beautiful, terrible liar who cried in bathrooms and read bedtime stories with different voices for every character. This woman who'd taken on 3 kids and a failing farm and apparently a billionaire with amnesia, and somehow made it all work. "What?" Harper asked, her smile faltering at his expression. "Nothing, you have a feather in your hair." He reached out, plucked it free, but didn't step back. They stood there in the chaos of squawking chickens and shouting children, just looking at each other. "Owen," she whispered, "we can't." "Can't what?" "This. Whatever this is." "Why not?" "Because," she bit her lip, "because when you remember everything, you're going to hate me." "I don't think that's possible." "You don't know what I've done. Then tell me." For a moment he thought she might. Her mouth opened, the words right there, ready to spill out and end this elaborate charade. Then Liam appeared, holding a chicken upside down by its feet. "Daddy, look! I caught the mean one." The moment shattered. That night, Owen made a decision. He walked into their bedroom, where Harper was already in her usual position, back against the headboard, knees drawn up, arms wrapped around them like armor. "I'm not sleeping on the floor anymore," he announced. Her eyes went wide. "What?" "The doctor cleared me 3 days ago. My head is fine, and I'm tired of waking up with a backache." He grabbed his pillow from the floor. "I'm sleeping in my bed." "Owen." "Relax. I'll stay on my side. You stay on yours. We're adults. We can share a bed without it being weird. It's already weird. Then it'll be the same amount of weird, just more comfortable." He climbed into bed, keeping a careful distance. "See? Plenty of room." Harper stared at him like he'd suggested they juggled chainsaws. "This is a terrible idea." "Probably." He settled back against the pillows. "But I'm doing it anyway." She didn't move for a solid minute, then slowly, reluctantly slid down to lie flat, maintaining maximum distance. They lay there like 2 boards, stiff and uncomfortable. "This is ridiculous," Harper muttered. "Completely ridiculous," Owen agreed. "We look like we're afraid of cooties. Speak for yourself, I'm comfortable. You're so far on the edge you're going to fall off." "Am not." "Are too." Owen turned his head to look at her and found her already looking at him, and suddenly they were both laughing, quiet and breathless, the absurdity of the situation overwhelming. "This is insane," Harper said, wiping tears from her eyes. "Which part? The shared bed or the fake marriage?" She went very still. "What?" Owen's heart stopped. Had he actually just said that out loud? "I meant the whole situation, with my memory." He tried to recover. "Everything feels fake when you can't remember it." Harper relaxed slightly, but something in her eyes suggested she wasn't entirely convinced. "Yeah, I guess it does." They lay in silence after that, both pretending to sleep, both very much awake. And despite everything, the lies, the deception, the elaborate fraud, Owen had never felt more at home in his life, which was probably the saddest and most pathetic thing about this whole situation. He was falling in love with a life that wasn't his, and a woman who wasn't really his wife. But God help him, he didn't want to give it up. Not now. Maybe not ever. Sharing a bed with Harper was torture. Not because she snored, she didn't, or hogged the blankets, she did, but Owen found it endearing. No, it was torture because she was right there, warm and soft and smelling like vanilla, and something uniquely her, close enough to touch but might as well have been on another planet. The first morning, Owen woke to find her curled against him, her head on his chest, one arm thrown across his stomach. His heart had nearly stopped. She looked peaceful in sleep, her face relaxed, lips slightly parted, completely unguarded in a way she never was when awake. He'd lain there for 20 perfect minutes, barely breathing, memorizing the weight of her against him. Then she'd woken up, realized where she was, and launched herself backwards so fast she'd fallen off the bed. "I'm fine," she'd squeaked from the floor, face flaming red. "Totally fine, just needed to get up anyway." Since then, she'd built a wall of pillows down the center of the bed that would have made medieval castle architects weep with envy. Owen found it hilarious and heartbreaking. "You know," he said on the third night, eyeing the pillow fortress, "at this point you might as well sleep on the floor. The pillows are a reasonable precaution." "Against what?" "Me sleepwalking over to your side." "Against—" She waved her hand vaguely. "Accidental touching. God forbid we accidentally touch. We might spontaneously combust." Harper's face turned red. "It's not about that." "Then what is it about?" She opened her mouth, closed it, then grabbed another pillow and added it to the wall. "I'm going to sleep now. Good night." Owen bit back a laugh. Stubborn woman. "Good night, Harper." But around 2 in the morning, he woke to find the pillow wall demolished. Harper once again curled against him, and this time, his arm was around her waist. He should move. He should definitely move. He didn't move. The fourth week brought new challenges in the form of Owen's natural competitiveness and Harper's inability to back down from anything. It started innocently enough. Owen claimed he could collect eggs faster than Harper. She'd laughed and said he couldn't even find all the hiding spots. He'd taken it as a challenge. "Ready?" Harper held up a basket, eyes gleaming with mischief. "First one back with a full basket wins." "What do I get when I win?" "If you win, which you won't, you get to skip dish duty for a week." "Deal, what do you get?" "The satisfaction of being right." She took off running before he could respond. Owen chased after her, laughing, the chickens scattering in alarm. He found eggs in places he didn't know chickens could physically reach, under the porch, in an old boot, inside what appeared to be a broken wheelbarrow that Satan the goat was using as a throne. Harper beat him by 30 seconds and proceeded to gloat insufferably. "Admit it," she said, eyes sparkling. "I'm the egg champion. You cheated. How could I possibly cheat at collecting eggs? You have insider chicken knowledge. It's unfair. Sore loser. Competitive winner." She laughed, and Owen realized he'd do just about anything to hear that sound again. The competitions became a daily thing. Who could milk the goats faster? Harper won, but only because Princess liked her better. Who could get the twins to eat vegetables? Nobody won that one. Who could make Daisy laugh first? Owen won by making ridiculous faces that left Harper doubled over with laughter. "You're ridiculous," she told him after he'd won the who can balance the most items on their head competition. "We're supposed to be working." "We are working. I'm working on team morale." "By balancing a bucket, 2 apples, and a chicken on your head?" "The chicken was ambitious, I'll admit that." She shook her head, but she was smiling. Really smiling. Not the fake smile she gave when she was nervous, or the sad one that appeared when she thought he wasn't looking. A real, genuine, reach-her-eyes smile. Owen was in serious trouble. That evening, as Harper bathed the kids and Owen helped Grandpa Joe fix the porch railing, the old man spoke quietly. "So you know, don't you?" Owen's hand stilled on the hammer. "Know what? Don't play dumb, boy. You figured it out. Maybe not all of it, but enough." Owen set down the hammer. "How long have you known that I know?" "Since you asked about the wedding song." "Nobody forgets their wedding song that quickly, amnesia or not." Grandpa Joe chuckled. "My Harper's a terrible liar. Always has been. Can't keep a story straight to save her life." "Then why did you let her do this?" "Because that girl has spent her entire life taking care of everyone else. Her brother's kids, this farm, her parents. She needed to do something for herself, even if she disguised it as protecting the community." He looked at Owen sharply. "Question is, what are you going to do about it?" "I don't know." "Do you want to go back? To your old life?" Owen thought about it. Really thought about it. The man in those photos had money, power, respect. He'd built an empire. But that man had been alone. "No," Owen said quietly. I don't want to go back. Then don't. It's not that simple. Sure it is. You get a choice, boy. You can be the man you were or the man you've become, but you can't be both. That night, Owen lay in bed listening to Harper's breathing, the demolished pillow wall between them a monument to her internal struggle. She was asleep finally, curled on her side facing away from him. Slowly, carefully, Owen reached across the space and placed his hand over hers. She didn't wake up, didn't pull away, and for the first time since waking up in that hospital, Owen felt like he might actually be exactly where he belonged, even if it was based on the most elaborate lie anyone had ever told. The weekly farmers' market changed everything. Harper had insisted Owen come along, despite his protests that he'd be more useful staying home with the kids. But James and Sarah had agreed to babysit. Grandpa Joe had given Owen a meaningful look that suggested this was important, and Harper had grabbed his hand and pulled him toward the truck before he could argue further. Her hand in his, voluntarily, for a full 7 seconds before she realized what she'd done and snatched it back like she'd touched a hot stove. Progress. The market was chaos, vendors shouting prices, children weaving between stalls, the smell of fresh bread and honey mixing with livestock and earth. Harper transformed, greeting everyone by name, laughing at jokes Owen didn't understand, completely in her element. Harper Millbrook. A woman with grey hair and a wide smile pulled Harper into a hug. And this must be your husband. I heard about the accident, dear. How are you feeling? Owen opened his mouth, but Harper jumped in. Much better, Mrs. Chen. This is Owen. Call me Susan, please. Harper talks about you constantly. Owen did this, Owen did that. She winked at Harper. Someone's smitten. Harper's face turned the color of a tomato. That's not... We should set up the booth. As Harper fled, Susan leaned closer to Owen. She's been through a lot, that girl. Lost her brother, came back from the city to help. We're all rooting for you two. The weight of the community's investment in their fake relationship settled on Owen's shoulders like a physical thing. They spent the morning selling goat cheese, honey, and vegetables. Owen watched Harper haggle with the skill of a seasoned negotiator, laugh with elderly customers, and patiently explain to a little girl why she couldn't take home a baby goat. You're staring again, Harper murmured during a lull. Just admiring my wife's business acumen. She flinched at wife. Stop it. Stop what? Being this. This? He stepped closer, deliberately crowding her space. They were in public, surrounded by people. She couldn't run. What exactly am I being? Perfect. Her voice cracked. You're being perfect and it's not fair. Harper, Mr. Patterson? Owen froze. That voice, clipped, professional, vaguely familiar, sent ice through his veins. He turned to find a man in his late 30s, suit immaculate despite the dirt and chaos of the market, holding a tablet and looking at Owen with an expression somewhere between shock and relief. Marcus, his assistant. Owen knew this with the same certainty he knew his own name, even though he had no specific memories of the man. Mr. Patterson, thank God. We've been searching for weeks. When you didn't show up for the Millbrook meeting, didn't answer your phone... Marcus stopped, taking in Owen's appearance, the flannel shirt, the work boots, the calloused hands. What happened to you? Harper had gone pale. Owen saw her father across the market, frozen mid-conversation, staring at them. I'm sorry, Owen said carefully. I think you have me confused with someone else. Marcus's eyebrows shot up. Sir, I've been your assistant for 6 years. I know... He pulled out his tablet, showed Owen a photo. The man in the expensive suit. This is you, Owen Patterson, CEO of Patterson Holdings. You were coming to finalize the Millbrook acquisition when you disappeared. The market seemed to hold its breath. Owen could feel dozens of eyes on them. Harper's hand found his arm shaking. Owen, who is this man? An excellent question. Marcus looked between them, confusion evident. Who are you? And why is my boss dressed like... His eyes widened as understanding dawned. Oh my God, did you kidnap him? No, Harper squeaked. It's not... He had an accident. An accident? Marcus was already dialing his phone. Mr. Patterson, don't worry. I'll call the authorities... Wait. Owen's voice cut through the chaos with an authority that surprised even him. Everyone, calm down. He looked at Harper, saw the tears streaming down her face, the absolute devastation in her eyes. She thought this was the end, that he'd hate her, leave, go back to being the man who destroyed communities. Owen made his choice. "Marcus, put the phone down." "But sir," I said, "put it down." Owen's tone left no room for argument. "You're right. I had an accident. Lost my memory. These people—" He pulled Harper closer, felt her trembling against him. "This woman found me, took care of me, brought me into her home. Then why didn't she contact us? Why the charade of—" Marcus gestured at Owen's clothes, the market booth, Harper's hand in his. "Because I asked her not to." The lie came easily. Too easily. "When I woke up, I didn't know who I was. And when I found out—" He met Marcus's eyes. "I didn't want to go back." Silence. Then, "Sir, you have a company. Responsibilities. The Millbrook deal alone is worth 40 million. Cancel it." "I'm sorry." "The Millbrook deal. Cancel it. All of it. Every acquisition in this region." Owen felt Harper's sharp intake of breath. "In fact, I want you to set up a meeting with our legal team. I want to establish a foundation, something to help struggling farms stay afloat instead of buying them out." Marcus looked like Owen had suggested they all start speaking Mandarin. "Have you lost your mind?" "Actually," Owen said slowly, "I think I might have found it. Mr. Patterson, with all due respect, you're clearly not yourself. You need medical attention, probably psychiatric evaluation. What I need," Owen interrupted, "is for you to do what I'm asking. Can you handle that, or do I need to find a new assistant?" Marcus's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Finally, I'll make the calls." "Good. Give me 2 weeks to wrap things up here, then I'll come back to the city. We'll sort everything out." Owen squeezed Harper's hand. "But things are going to be different. I'm going to be different." After Marcus left, muttering about head injuries and liability, Harper turned to Owen with wide, disbelieving eyes. "What did you just do?" "Bought us time." "Owen." "Not here." He nodded toward the crowd of curious onlookers. "Let's go home. We need to talk." The drive home was silent. Harper's hands gripped the steering wheel so tightly her knuckles were white, and Owen realized that the easy part was over. Now came the hard part, telling her he knew everything, and that he'd chosen her anyway. They made it exactly 3 steps into the house before Harper broke. "I'm sorry." The words tumbled out like a dam bursting. "I'm so sorry. I never meant. It was supposed to be temporary, just until we figured out how to stop you from destroying everything. But then you were so good with the kids, and you learned to milk the goats, even though Princess hates everyone, and you fixed the fence without complaining, and you—" She was crying now, ugly crying, her whole body shaking. "You became the man I wished you'd always been, and I fell in love with you, and I'm the worst person in the entire world." Owen blinked. Of all the confessions he'd expected, "I fell in love with you" hadn't been on the list. "Harper, no, let me finish. I need to. You deserve to know everything." She wiped her nose on her sleeve, which was simultaneously disgusting and endearing. "Your name is Owen Patterson. You're a billionaire. You were coming here to buy out 12 family farms, including ours, and flip them to Agricorp for a massive profit. You had the accident 3 miles from here. The hospital called me because our address was in your GPS." "I know," Harper continued as if he hadn't spoken. "So I lied. I told them you were my husband, that Mason, Liam and Daisy were our kids, but they're actually my brother's children. Tommy and his wife died 18 months ago and we're raising them. I convinced my whole family to go along with this insane plan to—" She stopped. "Wait, what?" "I know." Owen said it calmly, watching comprehension dawn on her face. "I've known for about 2 weeks." All the color drained from Harper's face. You knew?" "I found the documents in the barn, the foreclosure notices, the file on Patterson Holdings." He took a step toward her. She took a step back. "I confronted your father. He told me enough." "And you didn't say anything?" Her voice rose to a near shriek. "You just let me keep lying? Let me make a complete fool of myself?" "You weren't making a fool of yourself. I convinced you that you were a farmer, that you had a wife and kids, that your entire life was something completely different." She was backing away from him now, arms wrapped around herself. "Do you have any idea how guilty I've felt? Every single day, watching you with the kids, seeing you work so hard, knowing that when you remembered everything you'd hate me. I don't hate you." "You should. I kidnapped you, committed fraud, identity theft. I'm probably going to prison. Harper, stop. And the worst part, the absolute worst part, is that I fell in love with you, with this version of you that I created. How messed up is that? I'm in love with a man who doesn't even exist. I exist. Owen closed the distance between them in 2 strides, gripping her shoulders gently but firmly. Harper, look at me. She did, tears streaming down her face, and Owen's heart cracked open. I exist, he repeated quietly. This man, the one who reads bedtime stories and loses competitions to you and sleeps on the floor because he doesn't want to make his fake wife uncomfortable. He's real, more real than I've ever been. But the old me was miserable, alone, building an empire on other people's suffering because that's all I knew how to do. His hands slid from her shoulders to cup her face, thumbs wiping away tears. You gave me a chance to be someone different, someone better. By lying to you, by believing I could be more than what I was. He rested his forehead against hers, and she shuddered. Do you know what I thought when Marcus showed me that photo? When I saw who I used to be? She shook her head, unable to speak. I thought, thank God I don't remember being that man. Because that man would never have gotten to know you, would never have heard Daisy's first laugh, or watched Mason negotiate like a tiny lawyer, or learned that goats respond to compliments. He pulled back just enough to look into her eyes. That man would have destroyed this place and never looked back, and I never want to be him again. Owen. Her voice broke on his name. I'm not saying what you did was right. It wasn't. It was crazy and illegal and probably the plot of a soap opera your grandmother watches. Despite everything, Harper let out a watery laugh. But I understand why you did it. And more importantly, he took a deep breath. I'm grateful you did. How can you be grateful? I ruined your life. You saved it. The words hung between them, heavy with truth. I had everything and nothing. Now I have something worth keeping, worth fighting for. Harper's eyes searched his face. What are we going to do? I don't know yet, but we're going to figure it out. Together. He managed a smile. Unless you want me to leave. No. The word burst out of her, vehement and immediate. Then softer. No, please don't leave. Then I'm staying. We'll deal with Marcus, with the company, with all of it. But I'm not going anywhere. The kids need stability, consistency. They've already lost their parents. I'm not going to be another person who leaves them. They're not yours to, maybe not by blood, but I read to them every night. I know Liam is left-handed and Mason negotiates everything, and Daisy only says no because it makes people laugh. His voice roughened. They're mine in every way that matters. Harper made a sound somewhere between a laugh and a sob, then buried her face in his chest. Owen wrapped his arms around her, holding tight while she cried, for the lies, for the fear, for the impossible situation they'd found themselves in. I love you, she whispered into his shirt. The real you, not the one I created. You. Owen's heart stopped, then started again at triple speed. He wanted to say it back, wanted to tell her that he loved her too, that somewhere between learning to milk goats and losing competitions and sharing a bed with a pillow wall, he'd fallen completely. But not yet, not while she was still crying, still broken with guilt. Instead, he pressed a kiss to the top of her head and whispered, I know. Outside, the sun began to set over the farm, and inside, 2 people who'd started as enemies began the tentative process of becoming something much more complicated, something real. The family meeting that night was exactly as awkward as Owen expected. They sat around the kitchen table, Owen, Harper, James, Sarah, and Grandpa Joe, with the kind of tension usually reserved for hostage negotiations. So, James cleared his throat. You know. I know, Owen confirmed. And you're not angry. Owen considered this. I'm not sure what I am. Confused. Definitely. Surprised. Not as much as I should be. He looked at Harper, who was staring at her hands like they held the secrets of the universe. But angry? No. Sarah dabbed at her eyes with a tissue. We should never have let Harper do this. It was wrong, sinful. We've been praying every night for forgiveness. Mama, please, Harper muttered. No, she's right, James interjected. We essentially kidnapped a man and brainwashed him into thinking he was someone else. You didn't brainwash me, Owen said. You gave me a family. There's a difference. Grandpa Joe, who'd been suspiciously quiet, finally spoke up. So what's the plan, boy? You going back to your penthouse and your billions? Eventually I'll need to handle the business, but I'm not disappearing. Owen's hand found Harper's under the table, squeezing gently. She squeezed back, holding on like a lifeline. I meant what I told Marcus. I'm cancelling the Millbrook acquisitions. All of them. James's eyes widened. That's $40 million. I'll survive. I have plenty of money. Owen smiled slightly. What I don't have plenty of is this, family purpose, something worth more than a profit margin. Sarah started crying again. James looked like he might join her. There's still the matter of the lies, James said gruffly. The children think you're their father. Then I'll be their father. Owen said it simply, like it was the most obvious thing in the world. Not legally, not yet, but in every way that matters. And Harper? Sarah looked between them, hope written across her face. What happens with you two? Harper and Owen both froze. That was the question, wasn't it? What were they? Fake spouses? Real friends? Something more complicated? We're figuring it out, Owen said finally, because it was the truth. Later that night, lying in bed with the pillow wall conspicuously absent, Harper broke the silence. I can't believe you're not running for the hills. Where would I run? Back to an empty apartment, board meetings, a life where the closest thing I had to a friend was my assistant? Owen turned on his side to face her. This might have started as a lie, but somewhere along the way it became the truth. Harper mirrored his position, her face inches from his. When did you know that you were going to stay? When Mason asked me not to leave, when I realized those kids needed me. Not my money, not my company, just me. He reached out, tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, and when I realized I needed them too, needed you. Owen, her voice was barely a whisper. I'm not saying we have to figure everything out tonight. I know this is complicated. We have legal issues to sort out, a company to restructure, 3 kids who need stability. His thumb traced her cheekbone and she shivered. But I'm here, and I'm not going anywhere. So we have time. Time for what? For this to become real. For us to become real, he paused. If that's what you want. Is that what you want? Harper, I've spent the past 2 weeks sleeping next to you, watching you destroy pillow walls in your sleep because even unconscious you can't stay away from me. I've fallen in love with the way you negotiate with tiny dictators, how you sing to Daisy when you think no one's listening, the face you make when Princess actually cooperates. His voice dropped lower. So yes, that's what I want. Harper's eyes filled with tears, the good kind this time. You love me, hopelessly, completely, against all logic and reason. Even though I'm a liar and a kidnapper, especially because you're a liar and a kidnapper, it takes a special kind of crazy to pull off what you did. He grinned. I respect the commitment to the bit. She laughed, then sobered. I love you too. I've been terrified to say it, but I do. So much it scares me. Good. Fear means it matters. They lay there, faces inches apart, the air between them electric with possibility. Owen could kiss her, should kiss her, wanted to kiss her so badly his entire body ached with it. But not yet. Not when everything was still so raw, so new, so fragile. Good night, Harp, he whispered. Good night, Owen. Neither of them moved away. Neither of them closed their eyes for a long time. And when Owen finally drifted off, it was to the sound of Harper's breathing and the certainty that he was exactly where he belonged. The next few days passed in a strange limbo. Owen fielded increasingly frantic calls from Marcus, who seemed convinced his boss had suffered a psychotic break. Harper worked the farm with nervous energy, jumping every time Owen entered a room like she expected him to announce he was leaving. The kids sensed something had changed, but couldn't articulate what. Mason became clingy, Liam more quiet than usual. Only Daisy remained blissfully unaware, continuing her reign of cheerful destruction. On the 4th day, Owen found Harper in the barn, supposedly organizing supplies but actually just moving things around aimlessly. You're thinking too loud, he said, making her jump. I'm allowed to think. You're worrying. There's a difference. He came up behind her close enough that she could feel his warmth. Talk to me. What if this doesn't work? What if you go back to the city and remember who you really are and realize this was all a mistake? Owen turned her around, hands on her shoulders. First, I know who I really am. I'm Owen Patterson, reformed land baron, current goat milker, and in love with a woman who once convinced me I was someone else entirely. His eyes held hers. Second, the only mistake would be walking away from this. You say that now? Harper, I cancelled $40 million in deals. I'm restructuring my entire company. I told my board of directors, via speakerphone while milking Princess, that we're pivoting to agricultural support instead of acquisition. He smiled. I'm all in. Question is, are you? She looked up at him, this man who'd somehow become everything, and made her decision. Yes, she whispered. I'm all in. Good. His hands slid from her shoulders to her waist, pulling her closer. Because I have plans. What kind of plans? The kind that involve you, me, 3 kids, and maybe eventually making this whole marriage thing legal. He grinned at her shocked expression. Too fast. Absolutely insane. Perfect, we're already committed to the theme. And there in the barn that smelled like hay and goats and possibility, surrounded by the evidence of their impossible situation, Harper finally let herself believe it might actually work. That lies could become truth. That mistakes could become miracles. That love could grow from the strangest soil. Owen's memories started coming back in pieces. Not the accident, not the hospital. Those remained frustratingly blank. But other things. Random things, the taste of expensive scotch. The layout of his office, the name of his first acquisition, fragments of his old life bleeding into his new one like watercolors in rain. He didn't tell Harper, partly because he didn't want to worry her, mostly because he was terrified that remembering who he'd been might change who he'd become. But Harper, being Harper, noticed anyway. You've been quiet today, she said one evening after the kids were in bed. They were on the porch swing, a position that had become their nightly ritual. Close but not touching, comfortable but charged with unresolved tension. Just thinking. About? Owen debated lying, then remembered where lies had gotten them. I'm starting to remember things, little things, nothing important, but... Harper went very still. But it's scary. Terrifying. He looked at her. What if I remember being that man and can't find my way back to being this one? Then I'll remind you. She said it with such fierce certainty that Owen's chest tightened. Every single day if I have to. Harper, I'm serious. You think I'm going to let you go back to being some corporate raider after you've learned to milk goats and lose egg-collecting competitions to me? She poked his chest. Not happening. Owen caught her hand, holding it against his heart. What did I do to deserve you? You learned to compliment Princess. That's basically the highest form of personal growth. He laughed, then pulled her closer. She came willingly this time, tucking herself against his side, her head on his shoulder. They sat like that, swaying gently, listening to the night sounds of the farm. Owen. Her voice was small. Yeah? When are you going to kiss me? He nearly fell off the swing. What? She sat up, facing him, cheeks pink but eyes determined. You said you loved me. I said I loved you. We sleep in the same bed. Without the pillow wall now, I might add, and we're supposedly married. And you... She gestured helplessly. You keep pulling back. Why? I didn't want to rush. It's been 6 weeks. 6 weeks of you looking at me like I'm water and you're dying of thirst, and then backing off. Her voice rose slightly. So either you don't actually want to kiss me, which fine, or you're being noble and waiting for the right moment, which is very sweet, but also very frustrating. Owen stared at her. This beautiful, impossible woman who'd kidnapped him and lied to him and given him everything he'd never known he wanted. You think I don't want to kiss you? His voice came out rough. I don't know what to think. You're very confusing. Harper, I have thought about kissing you approximately every 5 minutes for the past month. I've thought about it while milking goats, while reading bedtime stories, while fixing fences. I've thought about it so much that Princess actually headbutted me yesterday because I got distracted. Harper's eyes widened. Then why haven't you? Because once I start, I'm not going to want to stop. He cupped her face, thumbs stroking her cheekbones. Because you deserve better than a man who doesn't remember his own life. Because I wanted to be sure, absolutely sure, that this was real. And are you? Sure. I've never been more sure of anything. Then kiss me, you idiot. Owen laughed, and then he did. He kissed her slowly, carefully, like she was something precious he might break. Harper made a frustrated sound and grabbed his shirt, pulling him closer. deepening the kiss with an urgency that matched the weeks of tension between them. She tasted like hope and honey and home. Owen's hand slid into her hair, angling her head to take the kiss deeper. She gasped against his mouth and he swallowed the sound, learning the shape of her lips, the softness of her tongue, the way she melted into him like she'd been waiting for this as long as he had. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Harper's eyes were bright with unshed tears. "Okay," she whispered. "That was worth the wait." "Just okay?" Owen was already leaning in again. "Maybe a little better than okay. I'll need more data to be sure." He kissed her again, harder this time, all the restraint he'd been holding on to for weeks finally snapping. She matched him, her hands fisting in his hair, making small sounds that drove him absolutely insane. They might have stayed there all night, making up for lost time if Mason's voice hadn't cut through the haze. "Daddy!" Liam throwed up. They sprang apart like guilty teenagers. Harper's lips were swollen, her hair a mess where Owen's hands had been. He probably didn't look much better. "Coming!" Harper called, then looked at Owen with a mixture of regret and amusement. "Welcome to parenthood, where the moments of romance are constantly interrupted by bodily fluids." Owen laughed, standing and pulling her up with him. "I wouldn't have it any other way." The vomit incident turned out to be nothing serious. Liam had eaten too many cookies after dinner, but it set the tone for the next few days. Stolen kisses interrupted by children, romantic moments derailed by goat-related disasters, tension building with nowhere to release it. Owen was losing his mind. "You're driving me crazy," he told Harper one afternoon when they were supposed to be organizing the storage shed, but had ended up pressed against the wall, kissing like teenagers while the kids napped. "Good crazy or bad crazy?" She nipped at his lower lip. "Definitely good." His hands roamed, mapping the curve of her waist, the softness of her hips. "But we can't keep doing this. Someone's going to catch us." "Then maybe," she said, pulling back to look at him with heat in her eyes, "we should stop sneaking around and actually do something about it." Owen's brain short-circuited. "Are you saying—" "I'm saying that I love you, and you love me, and we're adults who share a bed but haven't actually shared a bed, and maybe it's time we change that." "Harper." His voice was strangled. "Are you sure?" "I've been sure since you learned to compliment Princess without being prompted." She kissed him softly. "I'm ready." "The question is, are you?" Owen looked at this woman who'd turned his life upside down in the best possible way and answered the only way he could. Yes. The night they'd been building toward arrived with surprising simplicity. Harper's parents had taken the kids for a sleepover at their house, something about giving Owen and Harper some time to reconnect that had made Harper turn scarlet and James look vaguely uncomfortable. Grandpa Joe had winked and told them to enjoy the peace and quiet, which hadn't helped Harper's embarrassment at all. Now they were alone, truly alone for the first time since this whole thing started. Owen found Harper in their bedroom, sitting on the edge of the bed, fidgeting with the hem of her shirt. She looked nervous and beautiful, and so vulnerable that his heart ached. "Hey," he said softly, closing the door behind him. "Hey." She looked up, brown eyes wide. "This is weird, right, that we're both nervous?" "Completely weird." He crossed to her, cupping her face gently. "We can wait. If you're not ready." "I am ready, I'm just—" She laughed shakily. "I'm not who you probably imagined spending your life with. I'm a farm girl who smells like goats most days. I'm terrible at lying, clearly, and I'm bossy and stubborn and—" "Perfect," Owen interrupted, kissing her softly. "You're perfect. I'm covered in freckles. I love every single one." He kissed her nose where freckles scattered like constellations. "My hands are calloused. From work, I respect." He brought her hands to his lips, kissing each palm. "Owen." Her voice caught. "Harper." He knelt in front of her, hands on her thighs, looking up into her eyes. "You gave me everything, a family, a purpose, a reason to be better than I was. And if you'll let me, I'm going to spend the rest of my life showing you exactly how much that means to me." Tears spilled down her cheeks. "How are you real?" "I'm not sure I was. Not before you." She pulled him up, kissing him with a tenderness that made his chest tight. "I love you. So much. I love you too." He stood, bringing her with him. "Are you sure?" "I've never been more sure of anything." What followed was a revelation. Owen had expected, well, he didn't know what he'd expected, having no memory of past experiences. But this, with Harper, felt like discovering something entirely new. He took his time learning her with his hands and mouth, every curve, every freckle, every place that made her gasp or sigh. She was beautiful, more beautiful than he'd imagined during all those nights lying beside her, wanting and not having. "You're staring," she whispered, vulnerability in every line of her body. "I'm memorizing." His fingers traced the curve of her waist, the softness of her skin, every single detail. "So I never forget this moment." She reached for him, pulling him down to her. "Then let's make it memorable." They came together slowly, carefully, learning each other's rhythms. Harper trembled beneath him, and Owen paused, making sure she was okay, that this was what she wanted. Her answer was to pull him closer, to whisper his name like a prayer. Time became elastic, stretching and compressing. Owen lost himself in her, in the feel of her hands in his hair, her breath against his neck, the way she moved with him like they'd been made for this, for each other. When it was over, they lay tangled together, hearts racing, skin damp with sweat. Harper's head rested on his chest, her fingers tracing idle patterns over his ribs. "That was—" she started. "Yeah," Owen agreed, because words felt inadequate. She propped herself up on her elbow, looking down at him with soft eyes. "I love you." "I love you too." He tucked her hair behind her ear, a gesture that had become habit. "Even though you kidnapped me." "Especially because I kidnapped you," she corrected. "Fair point." He pulled her back down, wrapping himself around her. Best kidnapping ever. They fell asleep like that, wrapped in each other, in the certainty that whatever came next, they'd face it together. And when Owen woke in the early morning hours, Harper still in his arms, he realized something profound. His memories of who he'd been before didn't matter anymore. This, Harper warm against him, the farm quiet around them, 3 kids sleeping at his in-laws' house who called him Daddy, this was his real life. Everything else was just backstory, and he wouldn't change a single thing. 6 weeks after that night, Owen stood in the middle of the town square with a microphone in his hand and his heart in his throat. The entire community had gathered for what they thought was a town hall meeting about the Patterson Holdings situation. Instead, they were about to witness either the greatest romantic gesture of Owen's life or the most spectacular public humiliation. He was betting on the former. "My name is Owen Patterson," he began, his voice echoing across the square. Harper stood near the front, flanked by her family, looking confused and terrified. "6 weeks ago, I woke up in a hospital with no memory of who I was, and a beautiful, crazy woman convinced me I was someone completely different." Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Harper's face turned bright red. "She told me I was a farmer, that I had a wife and 3 kids, that my life was here, in this community." Owen's eyes found Harper's. "And you know what? She was right." "Owen, what are you doing?" Harper's voice carried across the square. "Something I should have done weeks ago." He set down the microphone and walked to her, dropping to one knee in front of everyone. The crowd gasped. Harper's hands flew to her mouth. "Harper Millbrook, you kidnapped me, lied to me, and turned my entire world upside down." He pulled out a ring, nothing fancy, just a simple band he'd had made in town. "And it was the best thing that ever happened to me." Tears streamed down Harper's face. "I know we're not really married. I know those kids aren't technically mine. I know this whole thing started as an elaborate con to save your community." He smiled. "But somewhere between learning to milk goats and losing every competition to you, it became real. You became real, we became real." "Owen, let me finish." He took her hand. "I've spent 6 weeks falling in love with you. With Mason's negotiations and Liam's quiet observations and Daisy's enthusiastic no's, with your terrible lying and your fierce loyalty and the way you sing off-key when you think no one's listening." His voice roughened. "I don't want to go back to who I was. I want to stay who I've become with you forever." Harper was openly sobbing now. "So Harper Millbrook, will you do me the honor of making this fake marriage real? Will you marry me? For real this time? No lies, no tricks, just us?" For one terrifying moment, Harper just stared at him. Then she launched herself at him so hard, they both went down in the dirt, her kissing him while the crowd erupted in cheers. "Yes," she said between kisses. Yes, 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 you ridiculous man. Owen slipped the ring on her finger, and the crowd went wild. Grandpa Joe threw flower petals he'd apparently been carrying just for this occasion. James wiped his eyes and pretended it was allergies. Sarah sobbed openly into a handkerchief. There's more, Owen said, helping Harper to her feet. He addressed the crowd again. Patterson Holdings is officially out of the acquisition business. Instead, we're establishing the Millbrook Foundation, a fund to help struggling farms stay afloat. Low-interest loans, agricultural support, whatever you need. Stunned silence. Then pandemonium. People rushed forward thanking him, clapping him on the back. But Owen only had eyes for Harper, who was staring at him like he'd hung the moon. You saved us, she whispered. You saved me first. 4 months later, Owen woke to Harper humming in the kitchen of their city penthouse, a compromise that let him handle business during the week while staying connected to the farm every weekend. The apartment had been transformed. Gone were the sterile modern decorations. In their place, photos of the farm, the kids' artwork, a corner dedicated to Harper's absurd collection of farm-themed throw pillows. He found her at the stove, wearing one of his shirts and nothing else, cooking breakfast while the morning sun streamed through the windows. Her hand rested on the small curve of her belly, barely there yet, but growing. "Morning," he murmured, wrapping his arms around her from behind, his hands covering hers on their baby. "Morning." She leaned back into him. "The kids called. They want to know when we're coming to the farm." "Tonight." I cleared my schedule. He kissed her neck. "Can't miss Mason's soccer game. He'll be thrilled. He's been practicing his victory dance." "Of course he has." They stood there, comfortable in the routine they'd built, the life they'd created. "Owen?" Harper turned in his arms. "Yeah? Are you happy?" He looked at her, his wife for real now, carrying his child, the woman who'd changed everything. "I didn't know what happiness was until you lied to me about being married." She laughed. "That's the weirdest romantic statement ever." "Well, we're a weird couple. Fake marriage turned real. Reformed billionaire turned part-time farmer. 3 kids who think the whole story is hilarious. They do not know the whole story. Mason figured it out. He's too smart for his own good." Harper groaned. "What did you tell him?" "The truth, that sometimes adults make mistakes that turn out to be the best things that ever happened." He kissed her softly. "And that I love his Aunt Harper. Sorry, his mom, more than anything in the world. You're going to make me cry, and I just did my makeup." "Too late." He wiped a tear from her cheek. "But you're beautiful when you cry." "Liar." "Reformed liar," he corrected. "You reformed me, remember?" She pulled him down for a kiss that tasted like coffee and promise and forever. Outside, the city hummed with life. This weekend, they'd go back to the farm, to the kids and the goats and the chaos. Owen would compete with Harper over meaningless things and lose happily. They'd read bedtime stories and chase chickens and fall asleep tangled together. And every moment would be real, built on the foundation of the most elaborate lie anyone had ever told. The lie that had somehow become the truest thing in Owen's life. Leave your comment and share this story with someone special. It truly helps us keep bringing new stories to you. And if you want to follow every chapter of this emotional journey, subscribe to the channel and turn on the notification bell. Your support makes all the difference.